We are getting a much better understanding of how Vladimir Putin inspired his troops to carry out a ruthless invasion against a peaceful country and its innocent people. And quite frankly, he lied. That's how he did it. It should be no surprise. A maneuver that'll hopefully cost Putin in the end and bring this horrible invasion to a close. There are reports coming in, and we're glad to hear it, of demoralized Russian troops. One captured Russian soldier explained the entire thing like this.
We were told this while being in Russia via media, that Ukraine is dominated. Literally, I'm 100% wrong now. Don't judge too harshly. Ukraine's territory is dominated by fascist regime. Nationalists, Nazis have seized power. Ordinary people need some help to get rid of this yoke.
Now, if you trust him, effectively what he's saying is Putin is telling his soldiers that Nazis have taken over Ukraine and that he's sending his soldiers in to save the Ukrainian people. Now, that's the excuse given there. That would make some kind of sense because a lot of people in Russia are very close to people in Ukraine. They have families that live there, things like that. It's pretty amazing to hear that if it's true. The longer Russian troops are in Ukraine, one thing we do know is the more they will question exactly what they are doing there. This fight has taken way longer than Vladimir Putin anticipated and has exposed the Russian military as far less capable than the U.S. thought just 2 weeks ago. Check out a force comparison from the earliest days of fighting. Ukrainians were thought to be thoroughly outmatched, nearly 2,000 jets for the Russians. 12 days later, it's believed that Russia is stretched pretty thin in just trying to take Ukraine. Many analysts think that what we're seeing in Ukraine could be the bulk of what Russia has to offer militarily. Air power expert Justin Bronk writing in a recent article that there are only about 300 jets engaged, when we saw in that earlier chart close to 2,000. Now, it's clearly possible Putin is holding back a lot of his Air Force. That is, of course, possible. Or perhaps he has a lot of useless jets, or maybe he doesn't have enough trained pilots. There may only be one positive takeaway from this conflict, is that it's opening the eyes, the world's eyes, to a much weaker Russia than I think everybody anticipated. Reuters is reporting nearly 100% of forces Putin committed to this invasion, those 200,000, are now deployed. So it seems everybody's now in country in the Ukraine trying to fight the fight. Our own military expert here at Newsmax, Carl Higbee, who has a wealth of knowledge and has operated in these areas for years, says there is no backup on the way for those 200,000 soldiers in Ukraine. And tonight, the Ukrainian resolve, however beaten down, does appear to remain intact. Volodymyr Zelensky purportedly recorded this in his office earlier today. In Kiev, in his office, he recorded this, not cowering in a bunker on day 12. Something that, again, if true, because everything does have to be taken with a healthy dose of skepticism in a war, a move like that is so bold and brave, it frankly defies logic. Zelensky is calling Putin's bluff and putting a message right out there and sending it out to the world. His country's resistance would have been impossible without the weapons that have been supplied from the West, mostly from us, weapons used here in this insane video of a missile taking down a Russian helicopter. This came out over the weekend. Let's go ahead and roll that just one more time. You can see a chopper flying in from the left, and ba-boom, a missile takes it down. The United States has sent more than $5 billion worth of assistance to Ukraine since 2014. Earlier today, the Kiev Independent reported that 2 more Russian jets were shot down as well. But then there's the lingering big question of NATO engagement in this. How far will the West go to support Ukraine, a non-NATO ally? Right now, there are a lot of voices suggesting that this administration, this White House, has needlessly escalated the situation with Ukraine, that the United States has effectively taunted Russia into action. It's by no means a mainstream belief, but yesterday our Secretary of State did say something quite bold.
If, for instance, the Polish government, a NATO member, wants to send fighter jets, does that get a green light from the U.S., or are you afraid that that will escalate tension?
No, that gets a green light. In fact, we're talking with our Polish friends right now.
That gets the green light, apparently. Well, Putin has warned repeatedly that any outside interference like that would be considered an act of war. There's already been outside interference, but that would be a bolder move. Now, Tony Blinken is not exactly good at his job. We know that, but that is a big statement. And earlier today, Poland, who he's talking about, jumped up to say no way, defying the Secretary of State's comments, saying no to anything that might further expand this war into Europe with this tweet. Poland will not send its fighter jets to Ukraine, as well as allow Ukrainians to use its airports. We significantly help in many other areas. Poland trying to de-escalate the situation. The problem with this White House, though, we'll likely never know whether this is wag the dog come to life or just more complete and utter incompetence from a very incompetent White House. Today was the third round of meetings between Ukrainian and Russian officials. It included work to establish safe evacuation corridors. Earlier talks failed, and we've seen terrible images of civilians killed as they attempted to flee. The New York Times reporting Russian forces, you can see this picture here, it's devastating to look at, struck a bridge that civilians were using to evacuate. That right there is 4 people, including 2 kids, on the ground that were killed. So what does Russia want? Well, ceasing military action, changing their constitution to enshrine neutrality, recognizing Crimea as a Russian territory, and parts of the Donbass become independent states. Meanwhile, Israel is mediating negotiations with Russia to bring an end to the fighting, and our government is following instead of leading yet again on this. From the Hill, Blinken, who is traveling in Europe, met with the Israeli foreign minister in Latvia and expressed appreciation for Israel's efforts to mediate between Moscow and Kiev. Thanks for the help, I guess. Here's Blinken Sunday on Meet the Press.
Can this still end diplomatically with Vladimir Putin in charge of Russia?
You know, how this ends is an important question. I think we have to be ready that this could go on for some while.
So we don't know. We have a State Department that either wants this to continue or has absolutely no idea how to help to end it. And that's the big question tonight. Marshall Billingsley was Trump's former arms control envoy and lead negotiator in New START talks with the Russians. And Marshall, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I just want to get your top line thoughts on how this situation is being handled by the United States and by NATO in general.
Rob, it's great to be with you tonight. I think the answer to that question is the results are mixed, but there certainly is a great deal more that the Biden administration should be doing to. I'm sorry,
we got you.
Did I lose you?
No, we
Okay.
got you. You're good.
Yeah. So there's just a great deal more that the Biden administration needs to do to escalate the costs onto Vladimir Putin, particularly domestically with his economy, things that they've been unwilling to do, issues upon which they've been unwilling to lead.
Unwilling to lead. I mean, obviously, we see the gas and oil we talked about ad nauseum last week. Why are they not trying to, push Russian energy out of polite society and force it over? I guess it would just end up going to China. Do you believe, though, I mean, there is this belief out there, and it's stirring around in some corners, that this is something that the United States has escalated, perhaps intentionally. But do you think, let's go broader than just this administration, do you think that the West in general and the United States has lured Ukraine its way over the last 15, 20 years and perhaps escalated something that might not have escalated otherwise?
No, I wouldn't put it that way.
Okay.
What I would say is, and I think the evidence speaks for itself, every one of the demands that Vladimir Putin has made of the Ukrainians and of NATO in the recent days were demands that those Russians were making to me across the negotiating table during the Trump administration, things which we categorically rejected, and they did not dare invade. There's one big difference between the Trump administration, President Trump, and Joe Biden. Joe Biden is projecting weakness around the world, and that incentivizes Russian aggression. It always has, and it's clearly done that in this case.
So you say it's simple. It's not that any new line has been crossed, because when you really look at it, there hasn't been anything that's changed dramatically in the last couple years. There's nothing that happened in the last 6 months that said, oh, Putin, he's going in now because they finally crossed some crazy line. This has always been this way. Ukraine's been moving toward the West for a long time. The move was made, you say, simply because Putin realizes we have weakness in the White House and we're not going to push back.
Yeah, he sized up President Biden in that summit they had this past spring. And he decided this is a weak, feeble administration that will not stand up to the Russians. And so far, unfortunately, their unwillingness to do very fundamental things like stop buying Russian oil and gas, feeding the war machine, their unwillingness to really impose the kind of massive sanctions on the financial sector, on the Russian minerals trade, to really bring the Russian economy crashing down around Putin's ears, that is vitally needed at this stage. We are having an effect. The ruble is in the tank right now, and we're seeing so many other indicators of financial stress. But a lot of that is because of market overreaction, not because of specific measures that Joe Biden has implemented.
This weekend, we had some Biden officials meeting with the Venezuelan government, which is not a good government, run by Nicolas Maduro, the first meeting of the two governments since 2019. Here's how the White House described it.
The purpose of the trip that was taken by administration officials was to discuss a range of issues, including certainly energy security.
So again, we've been obviously funding this war in Russia, by continuing to buy this oil. Now it looks like we're going to look in another direction towards another awful dictatorship country and send them our money as well.
Rob, it's staggering. And of course, before I became President Trump's treaty negotiator, I was his assistant secretary at the Treasury Department, responsible for both helping identify and implement and then enforce the sanctions we had on Venezuela and Iran. And it is very troubling to see administration officials flying clandestinely to Caracas to hold these talks with Maduro about taking the oil sanctions off. And when you really unpack that, I think what you see is an administration that has wanted to get closer to the socialist dictator in Venezuela from day one, and they're using the Russian war as a pretext.
It's unbelievable. And again, we'd rather do all of this than just turn the spigots on in our own country.
It's amazing. And the thing about the Venezuelan crude oil collapse, this was of their own doing through the rapacious corruption of Maduro and his cronies. He appointed generals and colonels to run the state oil company. They're not going to bail Biden out at the pump. They couldn't if they wanted to.
No, they wouldn't. And real quick, and I only got about 15 seconds left, the revival of the Iran nuclear deal in the midst of all this with Russia being the mediator. Real quick.
You can't make this stuff up. We're using Russia. We subcontracted negotiations with the Iranians to Russia. At the same time, Russia is triggering a war in Europe.
It's unbelievable. Marshall Billingsley. Sir, thank you for coming on. Good to talk to you.
Rob, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. All right.